Turn to page 11 and you'll see our final report on the inventory system implementation for Zarpeth. As a member of the team, each of you needs to read through the document and sign off on the documentation. It's simply a summation of your work and our recommendations to Mr. Talling. Damon glanced around the room. He stood at the front of the conference room, Delilah beside him, looking like the angel she wasn't. The woman was stunning and stood far too close to Damon's side for Bethany's liking, but there was nothing she could do about it. Damon should have shifted over or made it more obvious that he was uncomfortable with her closeness, but he didn't. He continued to plow through the meeting agenda and barked his commands at any and everyone around the table. Something had to be going on between the two of them. Sex? Maybe, but there was no way to know for sure. Bile rose up in Bethany's throat at the idea of him sleeping with anyone but her. The memory of making love a few weeks back ripped through her mind's eye, weakening her. She'd been a total bitch that night to prove a point, and it had worked. He hadn't said more than 2 words to her over the last few weeks. What did she expect? She'd hit him where it hurt the most. In the bedroom. Bethany glanced down at the packet and flipped to page 11, working hard to scan the page and getting nowhere. Her thoughts were scattered, her heart broken into a million pieces. She ran her finger across the page, blinking a few times to try and refocus. She didn't belong there. Delilah had made that more than clear over the last 3 weeks. The new senior manager at Mackenzie and Bryant didn't seem to give a shit that Bethany was Kent's daughter. No one on the team seemed willing to go up against the bitchy blonde, and Bethany refused to take the situation to Damon. He already knew all of it from what she gathered. There were several reports that we received that were hard to decipher. Delilah brushed her long blonde hair over her narrow shoulder and glanced around the room. I didn't include those findings in the report for obvious reasons. If you want to see me after the meeting, Bethany, I can explain where you went wrong. Bethany glanced up, her neck and throat warmed with embarrassment. I'm sorry? What was wrong with the report? You and Delilah can discuss that when we're done here. Damon turned his dark gaze on her, leaving her to feel even more disconnected. She glanced down without another word and swallowed the hot ball of regret lodged in her throat. She'd asked her mother to marry Kent so that she could get some help paying for her master's. Never in a million years had she expected the proposition to be loaded with the requirement to work at M&B as part of the deal. You got what you bargained for. This is ultimately all your fault. Any other questions? Damon asked the group that sat quietly. Bethany glanced up at him, needing to see something in him that reminded her why she still loved him. She'd spent more time crying to Matt and Kendall than she wanted to recall. Both of them wanted her to fight for her relationship with Damon. But of course they did. They cared about the bastard almost as much as she did. The conversation with Kendall the day before in the parking lot at UT rolled through her mind, choking her with indecision. Ask your question. Get it off your chest. Kendall took a step toward Bethany, his green eyes filled with so many emotions. She knew he had too much of his own shit going on to deal with hers, but couldn't help but dig for anything she could get on Damon. How is he? She pursed her lips and glanced down at the ground as another wave of pain shook her shoulders. There would be no holding herself together with him still in her life. She had to make the decision to fight for him or turn around and walk. He's torn in half. He's devastated and has sunk down into being the bastard we both hoped he would never be again. Kendall reached out and pressed his fingers softly under her chin to force her to look up. If you're angry, hurt, lonely, curious, if you care at all, go find him and tell him. I can't, Kendall. She closed her eyes, not wanting him to see how destroyed she was from losing him. Then lose him. It's your choice. He released her and walked around her to his car. His words and actions were heartless, but he was simply goading her to do something before it was too late. All right, get busy. No one is leaving before 10 tonight. Delilah clapped her hands and walked toward Bethany. If you'll hang behind, we can talk about your report. Bethany glanced up into the other woman's eyes and forced a tight smile. I'd love to, but I have class in an hour. Maybe another time? Delilah snorted and closed the door to the empty room. It would seem that Damon and everyone else hightailed it out of the meeting as quickly as possible. Bethany let out a soft sigh and stood up, turning around to face the bitch who'd been riding her tail for the last few weeks. I'm not sure if you and Kent have spoken, but I did pull him aside earlier this week just to let him know of the concerns I have with your performance. Oh, yeah? Bethany put her hand on her hip and cocked her head to the side as anger burned through the center of her chest. And what exactly are your concerns? Firstly, you show up when you want to. She lifted her fingers into the air, ticking off one thing after the other. You leave when you want. You get the assignments you want. You're getting privileges that no one else is. She laughed obnoxiously loud. Hell, you get better privileges than Damon, Kent's flesh and blood. And what did Mr. Bryant have to say about your concerns? Bethany reached down and picked up her bag, trying hard to keep her cool. She was the youngest on the team and the low man on the totem pole. She might have a nice office on the top floor, but she was still going to have to work her way up to earn the spot that went with the office space. Your report for the meeting today was short and didn't have nearly enough detail to include your findings in the group summary. Delilah crossed her arms over her chest. So basically all the work you did is null and void, seeing that you didn't document it properly. Bravo. Great job. I'm sure your father and your brother appreciate you spending their time and money to do a piss-poor job that a guy off the street could do.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.